Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Amusement Park. The Amusement Park is a long-lost George Romero film which was made in 1973. The print was found, played at a George Romero Film Festival in 2019, then restored with George Romero's widow of the George A. Romero Foundation and Shudder, and recently released. An educational film, and it's his only work-for-hire job, and if it was ever going to be one, it might as well be this weird movie. Made by the Lutheran Service Society of Western Pennsylvania. If you remember, he's from Pennsylvania. And, Night of the Living Dead is a Pennsylvania film. As an educational film about elder abuse. Now, this was barely screened in the 70s. I think more people are watching it now, so this is pretty much its wide release, than in the 70s, because, according to his widow, that they did screen it. Apparently it did screen, but they found it a little too edgy. This is a weird one. This is a creepy, spooky one, and it reminds you of the power of George Romero, and it's a worthy addition to his filmography. But it is about a older man who intros the film and outros the film, which part of me thinks you could cut those out and maybe this film would be better for it, but whatever. But it was an educational film. It's not just a George Romero horror short or whatever, because this film is only about like 50 some minutes. Played by the actor Lincoln Mazel, who you might also recognize from Martin. His only films are two George Romero films, but hey, if that's going to be your filmography, that's pretty cool, I think. But he goes into a white room, sees another older man there his face is bloodied, he has a bandage on it, says don't go outside, basically. He does go outside into an amusement park, and various horrible things happen to him, showing all the different elder abuse. People, hit him, people disregard him, people push him into things that he doesn't want to do and that he doesn't need to go into. They break his glasses, all sorts of various spooky things. They show a young couple what their future is going to be, and it shows that they're in a dilapidated apartment building. He has Alzheimer's. She's trying to get the doctor to listen to him and help her with her husband's Alzheimer's, and he won't, and it's just horrific, and it upsets them so much that then the young man in that couple decides to then beat our old guy protagonist up because he's so fearful of aging. This is horrific, but here's the thing, is aging is horrific and you can do nothing about it, and there's nothing you can do. You can take care of yourself, but there's always someone who's going to try to find a way to fuck you over or take advantage of the fact that you're older or weaker, or they feel like they have that advantage over you. And this film reaches in there and makes you feel basically bad about almost anything you ever did to your grandparents in your entire life. Pop culture in general and everything does not talk about aging or getting old in a really natural way. I do think film and a lot of entertainment is mainly a younger man's medium, and particularly because they're not even interested in older anyone's stories, really, if from a perspective or a speed or a storytelling style that they would want to. Maybe that's just the natural way of human evolution. Maybe it's just how our storytelling in general is not really very diverse at all in terms of mindset, culture, and age, in terms of a lot of other things as well, but in general. But George Romero gets into that in this, and a real fear, and one of the things I think Schenectady, New York talked about as well, is how horrific it is, how scary it is, the idea of aging. And I found this to be really spooky because it's something, that's going to happen to you either way. And you think about how, life might be really great for you, but then, you age and things fall apart. My own grandparents, certain ways they were at certain ages of their lives were really great. Other times it wasn't actually so great, and everything you knew about them sort of falls apart. And there's certain elements of this film that is very real. It's almost too intense. I think I get why they didn't do it, which I think shows a weakness in trying to pursue their actual point, because it's really hard to watch this film and not think about how you should, not that I'm not that negative to older people. I've never beaten up an older person or disregarded them in such a way, but I do think this film kind of goes into the horrors of elder abuse, really. It reminds me of the stuff Peter Watkins can do, particularly what he did with an educational film on nuclear disasters. It's just really horrific, but after you see that film, you will never forget that moral message. And honestly, if you're going to make films that are purposely trying to do that, I think, as the kids say nowadays, I guess, George Romero understood the assignment. I think maybe he understood it too well. I do find the idea of amusement parks can be spooky and scary, particularly when you're a kid and you don't fully understand them and they're traveling around the country and all that stuff. I think it's obviously an outdated way of doing things. In some ways, the way of doing the amusement park reminds me of things like how spooky that can be when you're a kid. And I like how George Romero plays with like being able to be surreal and weird, but also like there's nothing in this that doesn't feel like elder abuse or being disregarded, or how, you know, with age you do have wisdom and experience. I do think there's a lot of times when you'll start talking as someone who's older that people will just completely brush you off like whatever, that's outdated, I don't care, and not listen to the wisdom inherent in it. And the idea of this film is really to show you like maybe by the time if you start having the change on how we treat older people, maybe that change will help you when you're older, because it is going to happen to you. Also, I find it interesting, and another thing about this film is The Other Side of the Wind, which was another lost film I don't think we ever thought we saw, and this have a shared thing where it seems that these guys' lost films, and talking about being disregarded, are both films that have to deal with old age. And it's interesting that both were swept under the rug and not able to be finished and not able to be shown to people until they're dead. Maybe there's something to read into there. This did remind me, and I've heard other critics mention Carnival of Souls because of its surrealism, because of using an amusement park which was, I think at the time, open. I don't know the history of Pennsylvania amusement parks, I'm sorry, but I know has closed since. But it had this kind of spookier, you know, also amusement parks at the time had like a more homegrown vibe. This is a very haunting film. The images and the messages in it stick with you. And George Romero worked with messages and morals in all of his horror films, but I think especially in this one. A lot of the people in this, like Lincoln Mazel, I believe that's how you say his name, he was a stage actor, but he got to be in this, and then would be in Martin. Mariana Koch, who plays the fortune teller, I'm pretty sure she plays the fortune teller. She was in a ton of spaghetti westerns. She's, I think, the only one who has much of a filmography, but I couldn't look everyone up. Michael Gornick, who plays the young man who beats him up, was actually the DP on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and Martin. There's a lot of Martin. It seems like they all got along in this movie. I don't know. I found that interesting. But apparently it was... Oh, I didn't realize... George Romero directed a documentary on O.J. Simpson right after this. What? I just found this out while clicking on something. Okay. Apparently this was made between Season of the Witch and the Crazies, that he made an O.J. documentary, which that sounds interesting. Sorry, that threw me off. It's dated 2019. To me, it's getting released really in 2021. It was made in 1973, so whatever date you want to throw on it, I guess. This is a really great entry to his filmography. Sometimes I find educational films, when they're very well directed, to be really interesting and show you, because their point is to educate you, and you really have to use the power of cinema to educate someone, and this made that impression on me. Like, between like all the horrific, horrible things you see in this film and how they treat old people, and especially when you see this old man crying, you want to cry along with him, you know, because I think one of the things like this shows you is how when you're disregarded or thrown down by society or even by a group of people, how much it can hurt and how lost you can really feel. And George Romero doesn't let go of that feeling. I think one of the reasons Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead have lived on, and their impact and their influence is just something that like I mean, you're talking about a guy who basically influenced like all of zombie cinema, that we're still living under the influence of his films, and it's because he was able to show and push certain morals about commercialism, about racism, about so many things, and showing you like the real power of his zombie films wasn't that zombies were cool, it was that he could really say something with that. And Amusement Park shows the power of George Romero just as well as any of those films, so maybe more so because he is pointedly trying to say something with it, and he definitely fucking does. And I think if anything, you'll leave this film a little terrified, a lot spooked, and definitely wanting to treat your grandparents better if they're still with us. So if you've seen The Amusement Park and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.